Access, access, united we're strong. We won't go away because we know you're wrong. Access, access, you've had your way too long. We're here and we're gonna stay.
Hi, I'm Lynn Pedotto with Adapt of Chicago Productions. Today we have as our special guest Karen Tamley, who is the Commissioner of the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. Ms. Tamley was named Commissioner by Richard M. Daley in 2005 and reappointed by Mayor Rahm Emanuel in 2011. In her role as Commissioner, Ms. Tamley leads numerous disability policy and compliance initiatives in key areas such as transportation, city infrastructure, emergency preparedness, technology, schools, and housing. She also oversees the delivery of independent living services such as in-home supports, home accessibility modifications, amplified phones, and employment for thousands of job seekers in Chicago. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
We're so excited to have you. What is MOPD and who does it serve?
The Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities is a City of Chicago department. Our goal is really to promote accessibility, opportunity, and inclusion for people with all types of disabilities. Not those that just live in the city, but also those that visit the City of Chicago. Our role is really to advise other city departments and the mayor on disability issues, but we also work in some key areas. We provide independent living services with the goal of keeping individuals in their own homes. We do a lot of disability education and awareness, etiquette, appropriate terminology, that type of thing, to build awareness and hopefully reduce discrimination against people with disabilities. But some of the main areas we also work in is policy and accessibility compliance. So we're really working to make sure that the City of Chicago is fully accessible to people with all types of disabilities.
Okay, great. From your perspective, what is the greatest need for Chicagoans with disabilities?
I mean, of course that would depend on your perspective and your own needs, so I hate to generalize, but I think some of the big issues that really impact the disability community are employment is certainly one of them. There's just such a disparate unemployment rate amongst people with disabilities in general when compared to other segments of the population. Many folks have multiple degrees but can't find a job. Others are underemployed and not working the hours that they need. And so employment is really one of the big issues. I think housing, we get hundreds of calls every month from people with disabilities that are looking for housing, primarily housing that's affordable, but also accessible. And so when you couple those two things together, it really becomes difficult for folks. And then the other thing is, I think, just being able to access community services. You know, in this time of budget cuts and you know, reductions, it can be very hard for folks with disabilities to get those services that they need in order to live independently in the community. So those are some of the top issues I think impact our community.
Okay. Well, speaking of unemployment for disabled Illinoisans, we right now, according to a 2008 survey, only 39.5% of Illinoisans with disabilities are employed. How is your office preparing them for employment?
A couple of things. One is that we are working through a federal grant with SSI and SSDI beneficiaries. Those are disability benefits specifically. We work with folks on what it means to go back to work and get a job. We can do job placement referrals. We can help individuals with resume writing and that type of thing. One of the big barriers that we see is that for folks particularly that are on disability benefits is that they're afraid to get a job because they might lose their benefits or their health care. And there are work incentives out there, and so we really do a lot of outreach, both group information but also one-on-one benefits analysis and counseling on what earning wages will mean for someone that is on disability benefits. So we do a lot of work in that area, and we touch thousands of people every year. But we're also working a lot in the area of youth and youth readiness, particularly with Chicago Public high school students with disabilities. That's a big need as they look at transitioning from high school then to post-secondary education or to employment. There's a lot more that, can be done around preparing young people, giving them work experience and opportunity. So every year we host a disability mentoring day. That gives them kind of a full day of career exploration, resume writing, interviewing skills, meeting with employers, dressing for success, all kinds of job-ready skills. From there, we work with the students on getting them a one-day job shadowing experience, kind of in a career area of their interest. And then after that, we work with them on getting paid summer internships. So we're really trying to get young people with disabilities, particularly kind of that meaningful job experience, employment readiness, opportunities, before they leave high school.
Wow, what incredible service, preparing them for the future.
Absolutely.
So it's really beneficial, I'm sure, to those students.
Absolutely. They're our next generation, and we want to make sure that our young people are going on to be successful and have jobs of their choice, can live independently to the greatest extent, and really having overall meaningful lives. So this is very critical to that.
MOPD has a stated goal to make Chicago the most accessible city in the nation. What is your office doing in order to make Chicago an accessible city?
Sure. Well, I would first state that accessibility, we view that word in the broadest sense. Not just physical access for individuals with mobility disabilities, but communication access, access for individuals who are blind or low vision or deaf and hard of hearing, or reducing attitudinal barriers. So when we talk about accessibility, we mean a very broad term. Some of the things that we're doing, one is we do have a very strong local accessibility code. Many cities do not have their own accessibility code. We do. We are now in the process of updating that code to be consistent with the new Americans with Disabilities Act standards. So that's one thing that will really kind of strengthen accessibility compliance in the city. We're doing a lot in the area of transportation accessibility, infrastructure like streets and sidewalks, emergency planning, making sure that our emergency plans include people with disabilities. I would say that we have come a long way in the city, even since I've been commissioner. 100% of our buses are now accessible with audio-visual announcements. We have 174 accessible taxi cabs. We have close to 70% of our rail stations are accessible to individuals with disabilities. We've worked a lot to make our city's website accessible and other means of communication access. I will never say that we're done because we still have a long way to go, and any advocate, including myself, can always say, wow, we need to do that or we need to do that. So it's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing commitment and work to really make Chicago a fully accessible and world-class city for people with disabilities. But that's our job. That's why we're here.
Yes, and you're right. It never does end.
No.
Because when you and I were talking the other day, we discussed Hurricane Katrina and then also 9/11 and how there were so many people impacted with disabilities. They couldn't get out of their apartments and they couldn't escape the city.
Right.
So September is Emergency Preparedness Month. What does that entail, and what do you want to get out to people basically about emergency preparedness and how Chicagoans with disabilities can better prepare for a natural disaster or some type of emergency?
Sure. Certainly 9/11 and Katrina have been big motivators to make sure that the needs of people with disabilities are addressed in all aspects of emergency planning, whether it's communication, how we communicate with the public about an emergency, how we evacuate someone with a disability, where we go to shelter our population, and then, you know, mitigation and recovery. So all of those have components that it's critical that the needs of individuals with disabilities or those with functional needs be addressed in that planning. So we've been working a lot with our city's emergency Office of Emergency Management and Communication on the city's operation plans and making sure that the needs of people with disabilities are included in that. We've been involved in a lot of planning drills to make sure that people with disabilities are part of that process. But a couple of years ago, we also launched an emergency voluntary registry, and that's an online registry that anyone who has a functional need in the event of an emergency or a 911 call, it would notify a first responder of your needs. So if you're deaf or hard of hearing, or you use a wheelchair and you live on the 4th floor, or you're, you know, blind or low vision, that 911 responder is going to know that you have these needs when they're responding to an emergency at your home or your workplace. There's also Notify Chicago, which is a great way to get notifications about city emergencies and to kind of be in touch with what's happening, and you can sign up for both of those services on the city's Office of Emergency Management and Communication website. So those are some really important things. The other thing is, last month we did a forum, a community forum specifically for the disability community about how we can be prepared, thinking about if we had to shelter in place for a couple of days, what would we all need to do to be prepared? So we get that information out and have information about that on our website.
Okay, very important information for everyone, and very important to register with the database. Following up on accessibility, MOPD has an accessibility compliance unit, and this department seems to be the engine of MOPD initiatives to improve accessibility. Can you tell us more about this department and why it is important not only for people with disabilities, but also for all Chicagoans?
Sure. Our accessibility compliance unit really, the main focus is to make sure that the promise of the ADA is upheld, so that we have these rights, you know, hard-fought rights, Americans with Disabilities Act, among them other laws. Really our job is to make sure that they're reality. So with that, we do permitting, accessibility permitting, making sure that buildings that are being newly built or altered that come into the city for a permit, they come by MOPD for an accessibility review, making sure that they get approved as fully compliant before they get built. We do a lot of technical assistance and advice for architects, developers, the disability community, and others about the requirements. We do public education on disability rights laws, both within the city and then outside of the city. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that we're doing is we're updating the City of Chicago's accessibility code, and we're also doing a full review of all of our programs and services to make sure that we are fully compliant and identify barriers that we have in the city. You know, obviously this issue is not just critical to people with disabilities, but to the population as a whole. You know, we have an aging population. It's expected that the number of people with disabilities over the next decade will significantly increase due to age-related disabilities. And so accessibility issues, inclusion issues are all something that will touch virtually every one of us or someone we love, because again, it's one of the few groups that anyone can join at any time. So I think the work that we do doesn't just impact a segment of the population, but really the population as a whole.
Yes, and it's so important to be proactive, and then just for people to realize, as you said, that you never know what the future holds. So we need to make it accessible for everyone.
Absolutely. And then you look at, parents with baby strollers and people with luggage and how much they like the accessibility features like curb ramps and elevators to CTA stations, etc. So, all of these things really are used by more than just people with disabilities.
Yes, excellent point. Well, I know your accessibility work crosses over into private homes. Can you tell us about the Home Accessibility Modification Program?
Sure. We have a modification grant program for individuals who are living in private homes or apartments that might need accessibility to the entrance, to a kitchen, to a bathroom, so that they can be more independent. We offer up to $10,000 in grant funds. Our application period is once a year between October and typically the end of the year, so end of December, early January. If someone is interested, they can contact 311 and they can get referred to get an application. So the application period is coming up fairly soon. Again, this is a really critical program because Chicago is a very old city, right? You drive around neighborhoods and literally almost every house has a flight of stairs to get up to it or a basement, and many of the residential neighborhoods were built so long ago. They're not accessible to people with mobility disabilities. So this is a really critical program to allowing people to stay in the city, age in place, if they acquire a disability, be able to, again, remain in their own home. We've had many of the folks that we've provided modifications to actually have gone out to get employment because they no longer have to rely on a family member or a friend to carry them in and out of their own home. So the program is really, really critical to many people with disabilities, and again, it's a very popular program. We get a lot of calls every year, so I do encourage everybody to make sure that they do apply during that open enrollment period.
Yes, definitely. Very important. Well, let's see. The Unit Information and Referral, also known as INR, provides education and referral services to people with disabilities so they can make more effective use of the resources available. What kind of information can they obtain, and can you just tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So we do general information referral services around disability resources. So someone with a disability or family member, they can contact us by phone. They can walk into our offices to receive services. So we do everything from reduced fare, transportation services, paratransit, utility reconnections, referrals to legal services, assistance with housing, any type of kind of information or referral or service that they might need, we can usually help with or refer them to an organization that can help them. The other thing that we do is kind of a subset of those services is we provide landline amplified phones for individuals who are hard of hearing. For many, individuals, particularly in our aging community, can't always use the phone, and so we do provide free amplified phones that someone with a disability can or a family member can come in and get more information. They can test out a variety of different phones, and they can get the application to have a free phone sent to them.
Okay, and what is the process?
To get the amplified phone, they can either make an appointment or walk into our offices, and we have a number of staff that are trained on kind of describing the features of each of the phones that we have available, or they can contact MOPD Amplified Phone at cityofchicago.org, and that is the email address if they want to contact us to schedule an appointment or to get more information about the program.
Okay, great. And I saw the phones the other day at your field office, so
Yes.
there's quite a few for them to select from.
Right, absolutely.
So, one last thing, I think, before we end. The Illinois General Assembly passed a new law about the disability license plates and placards, and it's really significant. Can you tell us about that and what people should know prior to either seeking a disability license plate or placard or reapplying for one?
Sure. Come 2014, There will be a new disabled parking placard and plate system. This is as a result of state legislation that was enacted this year that will have now a two-tiered placard system. Really, a lot of it has come from a lot of the abuse that has been seen, particularly around the city and in other areas, particularly around the meter exemption. So there'll be two placards that will, one will designate an individual who has been deemed meter exempt, meaning they will, they've been certified by their doctor as not being able to pay the meter. The other placard will be for individuals that either have someone drive them or are physically able to pay the meter. So that will be the distinction. The distinction will be in the look, in the color of the placard. So the meter exempt placards will be yellow and gray, and those that are non-meter exempt will be blue. Those letters for reapplication are being sent out now to current placard holders. The Secretary of State's office is sending those applications and notifications out now statewide. And again, the application period will go through the end of the year, and the new program will begin January 1st. So if folks have questions about the program, they can contact the Secretary of State's office for more information.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for that information, because I know it's going to affect so many people and they're not going to know what to expect. So
yeah, they should be
great.
getting notices in the mail now.
Okay.
So which details the application process and the distinction between the two placards. So again, if they have questions, they can contact the Secretary of State's office, and the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities can also help in answering questions.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. This ends our time, and we really appreciate your coming out here for the interview. This is Lynn Pedotto with Commissioner Tamley of the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I want
Thank you.
choices and rights. Choices and rights. Choices and rights in my life. I don't want your charity. Are you to be paid to care for me? I want choices and rights in my life. I don't want to be in your care or to be put someplace out there. I want choices and rights in my life.